What happened to Jamstack? Just a few years ago, it was poised to take over web development, promising a faster, safer, more streamlined web. It was a revolution. And then, silence. The term vanished from the conversation. Even Netlify, the company that coined the name, started talking about composable architecture instead. The buzz was gone. But this wasn't just a trend that faded away. This was a takedown. The evidence points to a powerful new frameworks and a new concept called the edge. This is a tech-noir investigation, and my job is to find out who killed Jamstack. Before we get into it, you need to understand what Jamstack was. The name stood for JavaScript, APIs, and Markup, a modern approach to building websites. In its prime, it was the go-to method for static-first development. The idea was simple and very efficient. Instead of having a server build a page every time someone visited, Jamstack pre-built everything into simple static files. These files were then placed on a global content delivery network or CDN, making them load incredibly fast for users anywhere in the world. The promise was huge. Developers could move away from complex server setups and instead rely on JavaScript, APIs, and simple markups. This resulted in amazing performance, better security, and scalability that could handle massive traffic without issues. For a while, it was a massive success that challenged older ways of building websites. But now, things are different. Hybrid frameworks like Next.js have changed the landscape, and many projects that would have been pure Jamstack now use these newer tools. What went wrong? Did Jamstack's static-first approach fail when it met the needs of the real world? Modern applications need more than just static pages. They need personalization, real-time data, e-commerce carts that update instantly, and great SEO that doesn't suffer while the browser loads a lot of JavaScript. Some will say Jamstack is fine and has just evolved, but the facts suggest something else happened. The change was subtle, brought on by flexible frameworks that blurred the lines and made pure Jamstack feel like a thing of the past. The first major factor in this shift is Next.js. Backed by Vercel, Next.js didn't just compete with Jamstack, it absorbed its principles and reshaped them. While many frameworks use Jamstack ideas, Next.js became incredibly popular by offering more flexibility. It's a hybrid. Its method is clever. Next.js combines several different ways of rendering a web page into one package. It can do static site generation, which is the core of the classic Jamstack, but it also includes server-side rendering, incremental static regeneration, and client-side rendering. This hybrid approach was its key to success. The motivation was simple: a need for more dynamic content. The rigid, pre-built nature of pure Jamstack struggled with things like personalized dashboards or large e-commerce sites. If you had a store with thousands of products, rebuilding the entire site just to change one price was a huge headache. This is where Next.js introduced a powerful feature: incremental static regeneration, or ISR. With ISR, a page could be served as a static file, but if the data changed, the next visitor would trigger a quiet background regeneration of that page. The first user might experience a tiny delay, but every visitor after that would get a fast, updated static page. This offered the best of both worlds: static speed with dynamic updates. And just like that, one of Jamstack's core principles was challenged. Suddenly, logic was running on a server again. Was it really Jamstack if some of your pages were being rendered on a server? This caused a bit of an identity crisis in the community. Developers using other hybrid frameworks like Remix and SvelteKit faced the same question. The purists, who believed Jamstack meant no server involvement at all, started to lose the debate. Next.js and the hybrid approach didn't just change the game, they started to redefine it. Next.js was a major force, but it didn't work alone. It had help from a technology that provided the right tools at the right time: edge computing. If hybrid frameworks changed the rules, the edge was what made the new rules possible. The edge wasn't a replacement for Jamstack, it was an enabler. Companies like Cloudflare, Netlify, and Vercel began offering edge functions, small pieces of code that can run directly on the CDN, physically close to the user. This was a game changer. All of a sudden, you could run a small server-like tasks like authentication, A/B testing, or personalizing content without needing a full backend server. It was the perfect addition for a static site that just needed a little bit of dynamic behavior. The motivation here was solving a long-standing problem for Jamstack: latency. Jamstack's biggest selling point was its speed, thanks to serving files from a nearby CDN. But as soon as a site needed to fetch dynamic data from an API, that speed advantage could disappear. The request often had to travel a long way to a single centralized server. Edge computing fixed this. By running code at the edge, you could keep the initial response time very low for users everywhere. Dynamic interactions could feel almost instant. The method was a gradual shift away from the static first philosophy. Hosting platforms, which had been the biggest supporters of Jamstack, started integrating edge functions and offering great support for frameworks like Next.js. Frameworks like Remix were even built specifically for the edge, using features that fetch data at the edge before the page is even sent to the browser. This neatly avoided the slowdowns that often affected single-page apps. The new approach became pre-render everything you can and use the edge when you need to be dynamic. The line between static and server rendered became incredibly blurry. So why did the conversation around Jamstack change so much? Let's recap the main reasons. The need for better SEO and performance. Pure client-side render apps can be difficult for search engines to crawl effectively. Hybrid frameworks solve this by delivering fully rendered HTML from a server. Second, a shift in developer experience. The initial simplicity of Jamstack could become a tangled mess of different build tools. Frameworks like Next.js brought the front-end and back-end development experience closer together, making it feel more organized. And third, the cost. While static hosting has always been cheap, the price of serverless and edge functions dropped significantly, making the economic argument for being a static-only purist less compelling. The result is clear. Today, Next.js is a dominant framework. Other tools like Astro and SvelteKit have fully embraced a hybrid model. And pure static site generators like Hugo and Jekyll are now often seen as best for specific use cases like personal blogs or documentation sites rather than complex web applications. So what's the final analysis? The truth is, Jamstack didn't die. It was forced to change. It evolved, incorporating the very server-side features it was originally designed to replace. What we have now is a new kind of architecture, one that is still static first in spirit, but has flexible server-side options built right in. The investigation is over. Jamstack, as we once knew it, was a victim of its own success. It was so good at being static and pure that it couldn't keep up with a web that demanded more dynamic, app-like experiences. The key players in this evolution have been identified. The main driver was, without a doubt, hybrid frameworks, led by Next.js, which offered a more flexible and powerful way to build. The key enabler was edge computing, which provided the tools to make dynamic content fast. And the motivation was supplied by the demands of modern web apps, which exposed the limitations of the original, purely static model. If you build a 100% static site for a complex, dynamic application today, you might be creating something that is beautiful and fast, but ultimately limited. To build for the modern web, to get both speed and intelligence, you grab a hybrid framework, deploy it to the edge, and you don't look back. The term Jamstack may not be as common anymore, but its ghost lives on in the architecture it helped create. The case is closed. But on the web, the evolution never really ends. So let us know your opinions in the comment section below about the disappearance of Jamstack. Subscribe to our channel as we'll see you soon in the next one. Till then, peace out.